happened, Keith? Oh, that's gross, bro. You been sick? Oh man, my dog's just been sick. Anyway, last week I called Kata a very inefficient way of teaching combat in today's age. Obviously this sparked off some debate in the comment sections of the post, so I wanted to address why I think this way. Now, when we look at Kata, it's important to look at where this stuff comes from. You know, we have in our mind this notion that Kata are steeped in antiquity, now handed down over hundreds of years, over multiple generations, unchanged as they've gone by because they contain the secrets of the system or the art itself. If we actually look into the history of these Kata, what we will find is a lot of them only appeared around the turn of like the 1900s, and prior to that point we can see very little historical evidence that any of these Kata even existed, with the exception of a handful. Now, if we look into the way martial arts were practiced around the early 1900s, we see the tradition of, you know, people learning a fundamental kata such as a sanchin or a naihanchi, and then maybe one or two other than that. Now, this wasn't because, you know, this idea of, well, we're going to really deep dive on this one, this is completely suited to you, this is going to be a lifetime's worth of study, just this one kata. Usually it was because we didn't have these huge curriculums that we have these days. The curriculums appeared when martial arts became more a means of making a living or establishing a school, or, you know, teaching publicly to a large group, rather than preparing people for combat. If we're looking into military preparation, if I take a group of men who I need to fight in, you know, 6 months time, or, you know, even shorter than that, maybe even we're looking at 3 months time, if I need to prepare these men for combat, I don't need a huge syllabus of stuff. I need some very basic techniques that are very quick to learn, that are easy to drill, and that they can develop a high degree of proficiency in the shortest possible amount of time and as cheaply as possible. Equally, I need to be able to replicate this process over and over again so that it becomes a conveyor belt of untrained men. They follow the process, they come out trained in as short a period of time as possible. So when I talk about kata being inefficient, the comments that come up in my, the negative comments that come up to criticize, are saying that, oh, it's because you don't understand the kata, oh, it's because you haven't had the right teacher, oh, it's because your lineage is incorrect, or you just haven't spent long enough studying. I've been doing these kata for over 30 years. I have had access to direct students of Miyagi Chojun Sensei. I've had access to the very best teachers, not just in one lineage of Goju-Ryu, but across multiple lineages of Goju, so I have a very good overwatch of what happens within this system. Not being funny, if I don't understand this after 30 years, at what point am I going to understand it? If I don't understand it because I haven't had access to the right teachers, I've trained with direct students of Miyagi Chojun. What teachers am I missing? What ones am I meant to have access to? So the arguments people come back at me with, they don't fly. And with regard to application, with regard to how it breaks down, the biomechanics of it and what it can do from us from a physical standpoint, learning how to move better, more efficiently, prolong life, increase range of motion, all these sort of things that are often overlooked in favour of the bunkai craze. And when we look at the notion of bunkai, or the kata containing secrets, again, this is something that only really appeared in like the, you know, maybe in the 90s or so, where the bunkai craze, the seminar circuit really kicked off, of people travelling around delivering these secrets. You know, the likes of George Dillman springs to mind, you know, where you need a special decoder ring to figure out these kata, and each one's a death move, and you know, you need to know how to really decode and deprogram this stuff that's carefully hidden and intricately woven into all this stuff that you can't figure out yourself. Again, I would argue that's a very, very inefficient way of preparing for combat. If you need this convoluted process of unraveling and unwrapping it, it's next to useless to most people, right, who don't have the ability to dedicate decades of their life, spend tens of thousands of pounds traveling the world, and, you know, have the intellect required to be able to figure out these puzzles and riddles and convoluted stuff. Is it needed? So when I talk about kata being inefficient, it's not in criticism of kata. I think kata are wonderful. I practice them. Like I said, I've been practicing them for over 3 decades of my life. I still enjoy doing them. I love them for the historical link, what historical link there is. I enjoy the feeling of doing them as an aspect of moving meditation. But at no point would I claim that they have taught me anything about self-defense. Now, I haven't learned far more quickly and more effectively, A, through combat sports such as Muay Thai, MMA, BJJ, or B, through my time on the streets, which very, very quickly revealed what was essential and what was non-essential when it comes to being, ready from a combative standpoint. When we look at how you practice combatives in the military or law enforcement, again, it is a stock of maybe a handful of techniques, a handful of empty hand strikes, a handful of restraint techniques, a handful of weapons techniques or disarms, or how you use your personal protective equipment. There's not a huge syllabus of stuff that you need to spend decades and decades learning. Matter of fact, you will be given 2 days training a year, and this is talking about the UK if you are in law enforcement. There will be 2 days training a year. Each of those sessions being 6 hours long and largely classroom based. If you specialise like I did and you go down the public order route whereby all you're doing is hand-to-hand combat, that will go up to about 10 days of training a year. So if we look at how much time is spent on application or skill attribution or learning new stuff, very, very little time and attention is placed upon it. If we look at the amount of time we were spent, again, in these specialist roles, how much time was spent on physical fitness, physical preparation, we were doing that 5-6 days a week. So what we would see is a much higher emphasis upon physical robustness, resilience and preparedness over skill. So this idea that we need to spend decades upon decades and have access to all this stuff to understand this art, again, I would argue is a very, very inefficient way of approaching combat, whereby if we just said, right, train hard, train this little handful of stuff, get your body as physically resilient and robust, fast, athletic, powerful as it can be, get good at that handful of stuff. It's going to take you a day to learn and then run with it. That for me is efficiency right there, and it's proven time and time again within the combative sector, like I say, within law enforcement, within military, within security details. All this stuff is taught very quickly. There's not a huge syllabus. The syllabus only came about when the emphasis became about attracting students and retaining students. In order to retain students, what do? We drip, drip, drip feed the information through to keep them hanging on, which is all this is all about. Expand your syllabus, drip feed that slowly over time, dangle a carrot of some hidden secrets or mystical knowledge that they don't have access to until they've proved their worth, and now you have a student for life. And that is Kata.